By the time Mara understood what the house had taken from her, it was already too late to measure the damage. The kitchen felt smaller now, as if grief had weight and it pressed against the walls from the inside. The refrigerator hummed, the floorboards creaked, the afternoon light slipped through the window like nothing had changed. But something had. On the table sat a shoebox filled with cassette tapes labeled in her own handwriting, dates that ran backward, as if time itself had reversed to trap her inside it. Jonah stood in the doorway, pale and quiet, afraid to step fully into the room. And in the window above the sink, her reflection seemed slightly wrong. Not distorted. Not monstrous. Just delayed, like it knew something she didn't. In her palm rested the small silver key that didn't belong to any lock in the house. And in that stillness, Mara finally understood, this wasn't a haunting. It was an erasing. The tape player had no batteries in it. Mara had checked. Twice. And yet it spun. The soft mechanical whir filled the hallway, calm and steady, like breathing. When she pulled the cassette out, the ribbon slipped loose like it had a life of its own. She could still hear Elle's voice echoing in her mind, distorted and layered over something else, something patient and listening. The worst part wasn't the sound. It was the certainty that the tape hadn't started when she pressed play. It had already been playing long before she found it. Detective Rowan didn't talk about ghosts. She talked about patterns. About missing people whose files grew thinner over time. About families who slowly stopped insisting someone had existed at all. She slid photographs across the diner table, doors marked with a scratched symbol, a square with an eye. She called it the archivist. Not because it killed. But because it edited. Rowan warned Mara that recordings mattered. Proof mattered. Memory could be tampered with, but physical evidence was harder to erase. And then she gave her the only warning that truly mattered: if you ever find the final tape, don't play it. Elle's bedroom didn't look abandoned. It looked corrected. The posters were gone. The desk was empty. The closet held only blank hangers. Even the air felt neutral, stripped of personality. Mara stood in the doorway trying to remember the exact shade of Elle's bedsheets, the sound of her laugh, the way she sang off-key in the shower. Each memory felt thinner than the last. Downstairs, their mother insisted Mara had never had a sister. And that was when fear became something heavier than panic. It became isolation. Because forgetting wasn't loud. It was quiet. It was tidy, the streetlights didn't flicker randomly. They blinked in sequence. 3 short flashes. A pause. 2 long ones. A pattern repeating down the street like a message carried by electricity. Jonah whispered that it was Morse code, but neither of them translated it. They didn't need to. At the far end of the road, something darker than shadow stood between the trees where no structure had been before. Not glowing. Not moving. Just present. And in the silence that followed, Mara understood something terrifying: it wasn't calling to them. It was confirming they were there. Jonah had been there the night Elle found the door. He hadn't told Mara because speaking it aloud would make it permanent. He described a room lined with shelves filled with tapes, each one labeled with names and dates. Voices stored like objects. He told her Elle believed that if you recorded yourself, you could resist being erased. But something in that room had been breathing behind the shelves. Something that didn't need to move to be close. Jonah's guilt wasn't loud. It was quiet and suffocating. Because he hadn't stopped her. Mara traced the scratched symbol on the school's maintenance door and felt the air change. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't cold. It was aware. The faint sound of tape rewinding came from the other side, steady and mechanical. Not supernatural. Not impossible. Just wrong. And for the first time, she wondered if the door wasn't an entrance. Maybe it was a filing cabinet. The first time Mara forgot Elle's eye color, she thought it was stress. The second time she forgot her laugh, she felt sick. Memories didn't disappear all at once. They blurred at the edges first. Faces softened. Voices distorted. Details slipped away quietly, like ink fading in sunlight. Mara began repeating Elle's name under her breath like a ritual. Because if she stopped saying it, who would? The phone call came at night. Static. Breathing. Then Elle's voice, cut short mid-warning. The line went dead. When Mara tried calling back, the number didn't exist. Her search history began erasing itself. Files vanished. Photos corrupted. It wasn't just happening in her head. It was happening everywhere. Jonah handed her the tape wrapped in a napkin like it might burn him. Elle had planned for this. That realization was worse than the disappearance itself. She had known. She had expected to be removed. And she trusted Mara to notice when it happened. Elle's voice sounded steady at first. Brave. Then uncertain. She described the room. The shelves. The symbol. She said recordings were anchors. Then her breathing changed. And someone else's breathing overlapped it. Slow. Close. The tape warped near the end, like something had pressed against it from the inside. The metal door felt warm under Mara's palm. Not hot. Not cold. Warm. Like skin. And behind it, the steady whir of reels turning. As if thousands of lives were being archived on the other side. Waiting, the missing posters faded too quickly. Ink dulled. Tape loosened. People looked at Elle's photo and then forgot what they had seen seconds later. It wasn't denial. It was deletion. If I disappear, remember the sound. That was the last message. Not dramatic. Not emotional. Just practical. As if Elle knew that memory wasn't reliable. But sound lingered. Mara told Elle not to go. Elle smiled like she already had. She said some things don't want to be remembered. And Mara realized too late that Elle wasn't chasing a mystery. She was documenting one. Jonah promised to give Mara the tape if Elle didn't come back. It sounded absurd at the time. Dramatic. Teenager logic. But promises carry weight. And this one carried the truth. The first time Mara heard the rewind sound in the hallway, she thought it was imagination. A mechanical noise where there shouldn't be one. But it wasn't random. It responded when she said Elle's name. The shoebox had been hidden carefully. Inside were blank tapes and a recorder. And a note, if I go, record. Elle hadn't been reckless. She had been preparing. The door at the bottom of the stairwell had a symbol scratched into it. The air smelled like old paper. Elle pressed record before touching the handle. Because she knew something was listening, before the tapes. Before the erasing. Before the archivist. Elle asked Mara to promise something simple: don't let them smooth me out. Don't agree when they pretend I was never here. Mara laughed at the time. It felt dramatic. Impossible. But somewhere in the house, something rewound quietly. And the story began pulling itself backward, frame by frame, waiting to see who would notice when it started disappearing.